delighted to welcome Professor David Mason at Kyung-Hee University. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce Professor Mason. He is currently Professor of Korean Cultural Tourism for the Kyung-Hee University Tourism College. He is also promotional ambassador of the Baekdu-daegan range and also mountain Samgaksan. And he has taught many lectures and even guided tours on the history, cultural, and religious development of Korea. He's editor for the Korean National Tourism Organization and also a consultant on the promotion of inbound tourism at Ministry of Culture and Tourism. And today's topic is Korea's sacred mountains and their spirits. I think he has a daunting task of him determining what is sacred in Korea. And as Dr. Do mentioned, Koreans love mountains, so it could be a sensitive issue. But without further ado, Professor Mason.
Thank you. Can we have the screen? Ah, there we go. Yes. Dim the lights. See things here. Get this started. Hi. Okay, the topic tonight. I'm going to talk about Korea's sacred mountains and their recognition and tourism value and the criteria for perhaps judging them, and also talk something about the mountain spirits, which are perhaps the most interesting aspect of this question. Okay, I have a clicker here. No, I do. Here it is. Okay. What I have to say to you tonight is really very simple. It's just certain basic principles that I've outlined on a few slides here, that mountains being regarded as sacred are found all over the world, and they have been since the beginning of human history, as early as anything we know, and they're everywhere. It's a very common phenomena. And every major religion recognizes sacred mountains, has sacred mountains part of its tradition. Some more and some less, but certainly it's just a kind of pan-global human culture phenomenon. However, the Republic of Korea stands, in fact, very rare, I believe, among all the nations of the world, in that it does not recognize any such thing as a sacred mountain. Has no category for it, no designation, no recognition that such a thing is even possible. Many Korean government officials have told me that it's just a foolish idea. We're modern people now, and nobody thinks a mountain could be sacred. Old-fashioned superstition only. You will look through the literature of the national parks, the tourism promotion literature, the local things, and never see a mention even of our greatest sacred mountains, very holy centers of religion and such, but that term will not be used. Particularly on the national government level. A few local, and I'll show you some of this later, a few local governments have by now rebelled against this and do promote their local mountain as a sacred holy mountain and of long tradition and an integral part of Korean culture, but certainly not on the national level and not for international promotion. Okay, even though this is a ancient and widespread belief here in Korea. Korea, in fact, probably has on a global average, has a stronger sacred mountain tradition, I would say, than most other countries. It's above average in that, if not maybe at the very top. This is a very mountain-filled country, and mountains have always been very central to Korean culture. Is mixed for kind of a strange situation these days, quite an omission. I believe that good opportunities for tourism and also national branding, question which as ambassadors and such, you're all concerned these days with these questions of national reputation, international branding of the country and such like this. These opportunities are being lost, being missed year after year as this situation continues. I would like to turn particularly to the idea of UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Y'all know what that is, and every country by now probably has at least one on the list, and Korea has 10 on the official World Heritage list, and is actively concerned with getting more on that list. It's well known. There's almost kind of by now a competition internationally among many countries trying to get more sites on the list. I think China is the leader, as far as I know so far, for good reason, but every country is trying to get more on there, and it's a matter of prestige as well as tourism attraction and such. All right. The World Heritage Sites system includes cultural associative landscapes as one of its major categories, and that includes sacred mountains as one type. And therefore, it's officially recognized by UNESCO, and you can recognize sacred mountains and designate them, get them on the list, if you can prove it. And many nations have done so. Have a look at the list, plenty, including Korean government officials tell me that no advanced country would ever believe in a sacred mountain, but European countries and Australia and the United States with Mount Shasta and the Navajo Holy Mountains in the Southwest and such like this, many wealthy and advanced and modern countries have indeed already registered their sacred mountains with UNESCO, or at least put in applications. Okay. Now, this hardly needs to be said, perhaps. I will take it as an obvious point. Getting a site on the list has a significantly positive impact for increasing tourism. Now, in the paper that I publish here, which I actually shortened that section, but there's many examples. There's been a lot of research done on which proves that, and it's kind of intuitively obvious, a World Heritage Site listing, you get more tourism and more economic activity altogether in that region, and it is beneficial, and probably, I'll give that a probably, also in national branding and reputation, having more sites and particular sites such as sacred mountains, which just kind of has a good ring to it, on the system, it brings a better reputation for your country. South Korea has applied, and on its list of tentative sites, they have like the mud flats in the Southwest, the mud flats on the ocean where they produce salt is provided as a list. Now, it may be just me, but I would say, in my own personal opinion, I'm not very interested to visit mud flats. And I don't think a whole lot of international tourists are going to come to visit mud flats that produce salt. But I think a sacred mountain is a very attractive idea, a very attractive cultural theme, that when people hear that a mountain is considered very holy and such, that they are naturally thinking, well, you know, I'd like to go there. That sounds good, probably pretty interesting. All right, and let's have a look at neighboring countries, what they have done. Countries with a similar culture, similar cultural context. China is very famous for having its 9 most holy mountains, which are 5 Taoist mountains and 4 Buddhist mountains. Taishan, the great famous Taishan, is the leader of the system and recognized by UNESCO now as such. 10 of China's holy mountains are registered. There's a plus here, but beyond these 9 most holy mountains, there's plenty other. I mean, China's probably got 100 mountains you can claim are significantly sacred. But so far, 10 are already registered. 6 are on the tentative list. China is moving forward high speed. And notice, this is a communist government, officially anyway. The Communist Party of China, they're atheists. They're officially atheists. but they register their mountains as holy mountains, sacred mountains. They recognize this and put it on the list. Japan has its own system of 9 most sacred mountains, which are kind of mixed. Some are more Buddhist sacred and some are Shinto sacred, somewhat like the Chinese division. 3 are registered or tentative so far. Japan is working on this. At least they're taking action. And our good friends to the north, even North Korea, not well known for religious enthusiasm, that government, not really by reputation, and not very even tolerant of religion, but they have now applied 4 different mountains which they call sacred mountains. Indeed, Baekdusan, they openly listed as a holy mountain of the Korean nation. They use that term in the English application, a holy mountain, and the other 3, as at least said, they have part of their appeal is a sacred aspect within the context of Korean historical culture. North Korea is well ahead of South Korea in the race of sacred mountains on UNESCO listing. If you think this doesn't make sense, well, I agree, and that's why I'm talking about this. To even begin, to do something about this, certain hurdles need to be overcome within the South Korean government about attitudes about their own traditional culture. And that's a whole kind of separate issue. But I would turn to the more scientific or academic. You need to develop criteria, and it's something I've been working on for a decade, of judging in some kind of valid scientific way that you can back up of why is a mountain sacred, or why do we say it's sacred, and which mountain is more sacred than another. And how can you say so? Sacredness, of course, holiness, it's just an opinion that people have, but what can you do to kind of back that up, to actually a list? Say, if we're going to do this with UNESCO, make a list of the top 9 sacred mountains in the Republic of Korea. Well, how do you decide which ones? Because we have 100 mountains that would be candidates, perhaps, but so you need a set of criteria somehow. Now, these criteria should be congruent with UNESCO standards in order that we can eventually succeed in this, but also they have to conform with Korea's own historical culture. Korean culture is sort of unique, within the context of Northeast Asia even. It has its own factors, a mixture of shamanism, Taoism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and the recent Christianity with it and such, that give it its own particular cultural mix to influence why we consider some mountain to be sacred or more sacred than another mountain. What are the top sacred mountains? It has to be a uniquely Korean set of criteria. All right. Now, popular opinion. If you ask Koreans or you peruse the Korean internet on this question and such, was something that I've done today for a decade, paying attention to this, going around. Most Koreans you ask, they say, yes, we have holy mountains, we have sacred mountains, and they'll often talk about, say, the top 3. They say, there's 3 holy mountains in our country, but every Korean you ask has got a different 3 that they name, pretty much, and on the internet and the published literature, all that I've surveyed, you got constant different listings and such. And sometimes, not only 3 is the favorite holy number, sacred number. You find 3 all through every kind of Korean religion, 3. You might notice it constantly. But then also the other odd numbers are also used, 5, 7, and 9, by different authors, different opinion people. You notice that Koreans never use the even numbers for that, except in the case of the Palgyeong, the 8 great scenes of some particular area. But otherwise, it's always 3, 5, 7, 9 in Korean religion. This is an aspect of how Korea is very different from China culturally. China likes to use the even numbers for this sort of thing. But you get these different lists, and there's really no clear criteria. It depends the person who you're listening to or the person writing, if they're more Buddhist-oriented or more shamanism-oriented or a kind of a nationalism-oriented or even Confucianism such. You get different selections of which mountain and such. Now, historical governments in Korea, meaning the previous dynasties, previous kingdoms, have indeed recognized certain sets of 3 and 5 holy mountains of the nation. In fact, to have 5 holy guardian mountains in this country is a constant theme of royalty, and you've seen it, it's on your money. The 10,000 won bill right here, if you notice, the 5 holy mountains are depicted right there, the 5 sacred peaks that guard and defend the nation. And which 5 that is depends on the dynasty, as Korea's borders have shifted, and the Shilla, between the Shilla Kingdom and United Shilla and Goryeo and then Joseon, they have different selections. Also, like Joseon Dynasty, not only have the 5 guardian mountains, but the 3 holy peaks also that assist them with official royal shrines set up at them for worship. And so that gives us some guideline for which mountains are really the holiest going back in Korean history. For example, the 3 holy peaks of Joseon, where they set up those shrines. There's Myeongsan, which is now in North Korea, but Gaegyeongsan here in the south, and Jirisan, the Bukakdan, Jungakdan, Namakdan, respectively. And so she did that, and they also had a system of 5, in which Cheoksan was the eastern peak, and there is still today an eastern peak shrine at Cheoksan where the local Wonju government holds ceremonies. Okay, so they have had this through their history, this idea of listing and choosing certain mountains and certain mountains selected. Just that has been entirely lost with the Republic of Korea post-liberation. Okay, my own proposed criteria, you can see some details about this in the paper there in front of you if you wish, but we begin with, and possibly the most important thing, the number of religious or spiritual institutions, temples, Confucian shrines, Christian churches and prayer camps, which are also part of this, although reluctantly, and Taoist shrines and such that are at a mountain. And some of our greatest mountains, there's up to like 100 religious institutions circling one mountain, which makes for an incredible density on a global scale that's hardly ever seen in any place around the world. Such holy mountains where you can just walk from one religious church, temple, shrine, prayer place, whatever, walk from one to another every 300 yards. In some of these areas, all these mountain slopes, 300 meters, there's another one, and on. You can just walk from one to the other all day long. But simply then the density, the number of them. This is something that you can count. You can definitely count and have an objective, scientific, valid answer for how many there are. And in particular, how many shrines of the spirit of the mountain, Sanjin. We're going to talk more about that a little later. But the very ancient standard Korean concept, very central in Korean culture, of mountain spirits, that each mountain has its own individual spirit, which acts as a guardian and protector and benefactor of the communities around it. And some of these very strong mountain spirits are defenders of the nation as a whole. All right. Now, those shrines, which most Buddhist temples contain a shrine for the mountain spirit, that's unique to Korea, not in other countries. And many other types of religious places include one, and there are many independent mountain spirit shrines. So simply being able to count those, at least those that are still active and working on any particular mountain. Then factors that are more physical, that you can also fairly objectively judge: the prominence of a mountain, its unusual topography, its kind of, stunning beauty or amazing cliffs and peaks, whatever, and the fact that what really helps make a mountain sacred, the rivers begin there, river origins. The most holy mountains of Korea, indeed, each one of them is a place where a great river either winds around it or actually begins at that mountain. And I'm sure shamans thousands of years ago discovered that fact, that this is where the water comes from, this mountain. So those kind of things can be counted exactly, and those are long-term valid results. And then there's more culturally based reputational factors, which are more subjective, but you can find out through like public survey. If people were willing, a public survey among the Korean public, in particular, which mountains do you think are holiest or most sacred or such? And talking to religious leaders, between Buddhists and Taoists and Confucians and even Christians, those who are concerned with such matters and willing to deal with it, talk to them, getting their opinions. This is more subjective, but it's something that could also be added in. So you have these various factors, and if you kind of make a system, table of numbers, as professors do, make a numerical system that assign a score for each of these values, starting from the number of religious institutions to the physical characteristics to the subjective public opinion stuff, and assign a value to it, and then you could total up a score. Make out of 100 points, you could say, oh, this mountain gets 61 points. And this mountain gets 82 points, so this one is more sacred. And Jirisan gets 99 points, and it wins. So like this, and suggest that this could and should be done. Call it the Index of Sacredness of Korean Mountains, to be formal, or the Yongsan Index, Yongsan Spiritual Mountain Index. We could call this, and actually have, in a fairly valid way, if this was done properly, we could then have a system where we could say, this mountain is the holiest one in Korea, and this one is number 2, and this list, we could make 9 mountains, these 9 are really the holiest altogether. This could be done, and it's not really difficult. Certainly could be. All right. In the sacredness of Korean mountains, I'd like to just introduce you to particular aspects, the Baekdu-daegan and the Sancheon mountain spirits. The Baekdu-daegan is the spine of Korea, one continuous range of mountains that runs down from Baekdu-san in North Korea, which is on the border with China, so the very beginning of the Korean peninsula, the root of it, and then all the way down through the peninsula down to Jirisan near the south coast. A continuous line of mountains. It is the great divider of the Korean peninsula and the central spine. All the great rivers of Korea begin at the Baekdu-daegan, and it defines the peninsula. It's a Baekdu-daegan. I hope you learned that word. I happen to be the promotional ambassador, honorary ambassador of the Baekdu-daegan, appointed by the Korean government. So the government has gone that far, at least in recognizing that these sort of things do exist here and have some importance. It means the Whitehead Great Ridge. Whitehead, referred to Baekdu-san, the Whitehead Mountain that is indeed on the border with China, and North Korea says is a holy mountain. This is the spine of Korea, literally the backbone, where the energy, the national energy is formed and runs down and is divided off branch ranges off the Baekdu-daegan, 14 major branches, and then subdividing into hundreds of small branches, bring the earth energy, ancient Oriental concept, Ji-gi, earth energy responding to heavenly energy, brings that through the land of Korea and infuses everything, the plants, the animals, the human beings, the human communities, all fed by this energy. It has in itself a mildly sacred character. If a mountain is a member of the Baekdu-daegan, it automatically gets a couple of points for being for its sacredness, just in that itself. And some of the very holiest mountains in Korea are certainly along the Baekdudaegan, and most all the rest of them are on the major branches of the Baekdudaegan. Okay. Now, this is, within South Korea, we have developed a 735-kilometer hiking trail along the crest of the Baekdudaegan. This is just amazing, 735 kilometers. It'd take you at least 6 weeks and up to 10 or 11 weeks, if you do it slow, to hike all through. You can hike from the south coast of Korea right up to the DMZ, and then you have to stop, or they shoot you. It's a wonderful new opportunity of tourism and pilgrimage tourism. This can be seen as a religious trail. It goes past so many of the greatest temples and historic sites, shrine areas and such of Korea. Now this has been developed and has a great potential, I think, for Korea's reputation. We published a book on it last year, me and some partners. We published the first publication of any kind in English about this trail and how to hike it and such like this. And that's, check my website for that. This is the Baekdudaegan. If you're interested, from Baekdusan up there, it runs all the way down here through North Korea, hugs the east coast. Here, gets into South Korea. Right there is the DMZ, Soraksan National Park. Down through here. It goes within South Korea. It goes through 7 national parks and 4 provincial or county parks. So it's already well parked, but you can walk this whole thing, as I said, from there to there. And many people are doing it now. Many Koreans are doing it. And since we published our book, a few dozen foreigners have been hiking this trail. Now that they have international community people, now that they have discovered it, and it has all these kind of features along the way. This is unique among the, as far as I know, among the long-distance hiking trails of the world, like, say, the Appalachian Trail of America, or the Milford Trail in New Zealand and such. Most of those real long-distance hiking trails only offer great nature, beautiful landscapes and wonderful deep nature and such. We have that on the Baekdudaegan, but we also have so much culture, so much historical sites and Buddhist temples and shaman shrines and Taoist shrines, Confucian shrines, Christian churches, and whatever. All of this is a multi-religious trail. 5 or 6 different major religions found along this hiking trail. An amazing opportunity. This is the guy who invented this concept, or realized this concept of the Baekdudaegan 1,100 years ago. That's a whole lecture in itself. We'll pass it by. This concept has evolved within Korean history and culture for 1,000 years. It's a very strong integral part of it. This is the expedition that my partners did. My 2 partners from New Zealand actually hiked the entire thing in 2007, becoming the first non-Koreans to ever do so. And they collected all this information in English that I edited together, what they wrote, and we put out the book and a website publication, every such thing. This was their slogan, and they had all these old ancient monuments. This is 1,000 years old, and the brand new monuments that are made up all along the way. And the incredible cultural offerings along the way of shrines, spiritual sites, and some of the nation's greatest Buddhist temples along this range. This is at the end of their hike. This is a saluting when they finished. Okay, a listing just along the Baekdudaegan, my listing of the most sacred mountains, the most holy mountains along there, both North and South Korea, and reasons for that. You can see this in the paper itself. We'll go through, but there's a selection there of the top 12. Along the way, features like this, shamanic shrines, such as this, of Korean shamanism, mostly still unrecognized by the government, but there's thousands of shrines like this around the country, and there are many major ones on the Baekdudaegan. Again, Buddhist monasteries, which are recognized, at least, as some of the greatest temples along the way. The Jukmul Bogung sites, which are very special holy Buddhist places, where it's believed that relics of the original Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, brought from India, are actually enshrined in these places. There's 5 of these special shrines in Korea, and 3 of them are along the Baekdudaegan hiking trail. This is one of them. Look at this amazing scene. We're up here 1,300 meters in elevation. There is this pagoda and people worshiping, and such 1,300 meters high, surrounded by that kind of landscape. That's all right on the Baekdudaegan trail line, and it's in Solaksan National Park. This is incredible stuff, which I think could really draw some tourism, and mostly, though, remains pretty much unknown. I'd be surprised if very many of you have heard of this place ever before, beyond Brother Anthony, of course. And we have Taoist shrines. A lot of people don't even know we have Taoism here in Korea. They think it's only Chinese, but we certainly do. Places like this with fascinating kind of stoneworks and shrine activity. We've got Neo-Confucian shrines, very strong Neo-Confucianism in Korea, great tradition. Along the Baekdudaegan, this is the Sosu-Sawan, one of our greatest academies. We have national shamanistic kind of shrines. This is right on the peak of the mountain, 1,500 meters high, hundreds of Koreans in traditional clothing doing this kind of ceremony, this kind of action, and this site is active year-round, every single day and night. There's shamans up here worshiping, not this big, but things like this happens once a year, and again, the international community, I would bet, hardly knows that this happens, but it's one of the most spectacular and photogenic kind of things happening in Korea, to me. All right, this is the national founding king, the mythical founding king of the first supposed kingdom of Korea, who is essentially the patron god of the entire Baekdudaegan range, and is worshipped at several major shrines along this way, kind of local officials and such participating. And historic places, historic and folktale places from all of Korean history found along the way. In my estimation, through all my research and the sample making of criteria, I would just say, Jiri-san, I know you're going to ask this question. You're going to ask me in question time, you're going to say, well, which mountain do you think is the most sacred? So I'll tell you now. Jiri-san, and such, down at the south coast, known as the mother of the nation, whereas Baekdu-san is the father of the nation, the ultimate ancestor. This is the ultimate matriarch. Down near the south coast, our highest peak on mainland South Korea, a magnificent mountain, more than 100 religious places on that mountain, surrounding that mountain. I have photographed 78 of them so far that you can see on my website, and I know that there's a couple dozen more I haven't been to yet. Just an amazing conglomeration, density of religious sites, as well as fantastic natural scenery. And this is the patron goddess of the highest peak, that peak you just saw, the goddess of that peak, known as the matriarch grandmother of the nation since ancient times, a very old ancient statue of her that has been rescued, and the local government, now this is something the national government would never even permit, but the local government, 10 years ago, the county government set up a brand new statue of her. This is 3 meters high, and very, very expensive for them to do, and very prominent, and they have locally held ceremonies at this statue, and such. They're very proud of it as part of their local culture. This is a painting of her, the goddess of that peak, known as the Jirisan Chonronbong Songmo Halme Sanshin, meaning the exquisite wisdom mountain, heavenly king peak, holy grandmother mountain spirit. Essentially translates out to a very prominent and well-loved figure in herself locally. These are the kind of mountain spirit shrines that you'll find all over Korea, and in particular among these Baekdudaegan things, even with Buddha's lanterns in front, giving them extra authority and promotion of status. There's a typical antique of one of the male spirits of that same collection of mountains, of another peak in that area. This is, in fact, the largest mountain spirit shrine that's ever built in Korean history, in all Korean history. I'm quite sure of this from my research. And it was built just 8 years ago. This is showing that this mountain spirit culture, mountain spirit worship such, is not fading away as people are constantly telling me. I've been telling me since the 1980s, Koreans have been telling me, oh, we don't do that anymore. That's old-fashioned, that's old days, that doesn't happen, we're modern people now. I used to believe that back in the 1980s, but through the 90s, kept finding newly built shrines, bigger, more elaborate, more expensive. Finally stumbled across this 8 years ago. So they built the San Wang De Jun, as large as the main hall of any great Buddhist temple. This is one of the nation's leading Buddhist monks who then built this, gathered donations and built this. Somebody donated $500,000 to build this shrine. These things are not cheap to put up and such. This is not a dying religion. It's not something that's fading away or old-fashioned or out of it. This is something very much right now flourishing in Korea, simply unrecognized. Going on. Within this shrine is the largest mountain spirit painting that has ever been made in Korea. This is 6 meters across and 4 meters high. You will hardly find any religious painting beyond the Goibul ancient ones. You find any religious painting in Korea ever of that size. And somebody paid quite a lot of money to an artist to make this because they believe so strongly in the mountain spirit and such. And it's a magnificent work of art with all kinds of detail and such in here. This is the kind of public ceremony, again, being held by local governments, local offices, still not promoted for Korean tourism. You can hardly ever find out about them or where they are. The National Tourism Authority just ignores this sort of thing, but every springtime especially, very colorful. I enjoy this kind of, there's cultural performances, that's the shrine building, Confucian style ceremony being done for the mountain spirit and hundreds of local people showing up. There's music, there's dance. Quite an entertaining, and this is real Korean culture. This is real central stuff that you find only in Korea. It is not to be found in Japan and China, rivals and such. This real good, colorful, authentic stuff. That this is being done by people who really believe in it. It's not being done for tourism. It's not a show as such. And the authenticity is quite charming. This one is in Wonju City. All right, and shamanism, of course, shamanism, which has had its own long struggle to get any kind of recognition here. Shamanism for the mountain spirit, in this case, female mountain spirit of Gyeongsan. Very colorful, very active, dynamic ceremonies that I think can be very attractive to international tourists if they ever knew about it. These are the old style of Samshin shrines, the mountain spirit shrines, the old style and now the new style, Samsonggak, side by side within one temple. These new style ones are proliferating at temples around the nation. It's a good example of an antique. I've got a huge collection. I could show you thousands of these mountain spirit paintings. Everyone is different. I've collected 1,500 of them on film. Everyone is different. They're never the same. You can't say that about, say, Buddhist paintings or Confucian ritual paintings or whatever, which are very standardized and such. The artists and the shamans have their whimsy in making these. This is a good old one that has all kinds of good classical motifs. Here's some old ones from National Museum collection, antiques. These are charming. I find that people like them. International people and Koreans themselves, when they see it, the tigers, the crazy-looking tigers, the folkishness of it, the Taoist aspects here, the dragon head, all this, it's charming. People like it. It's an attractive figure, but it is entirely excluded from Korea's cultural presentation. It is excluded from any listing of Korea's cultural properties or symbols of Korea or any of the promotion that the Ministry of Culture and Tourism ever does. Unfortunately, I think. More antiques, charming antiques, symbols of health, longevity, wisdom, enlightenment, all through here. Taoist, Confucian, and Buddhist symbols mixed together within the same painting. Quite charming figures. This is a new painting. Another one of the new ones. They're bright, they're colorful. This one is 3 meters across. Quite large and magnificent. I think a stunning artwork. It's in a small, obscure temple. I bet hardly anybody has ever seen it. It's down on the island of Jindo. Nobody knows about this stuff. It's certainly not promoted, but this in itself was a wonderful find. And here, another new one. This is a Tebeksan itself. Quite striking, and some modern techniques, and a little Buddhist monk riding on the back of the tiger. They always have different iconoclastic, unique aspects to them. This one has 2 tigers, and there's a Buddhist bodhisattva riding on one of the tigers for no apparent reason. But it's a Buddhist touch, Buddhism in this very religious area. Shamanic thing with the female mountain spirits and 9 male mountain spirits behind. These are all her children, the matriarch of the nation, and the 9 mountain spirits were her sons, spread out across to sanctify the entire Korean nation. A whole legend and mythology around all this. This is down at Jirisan. This one made out of silver, painted with silver dust, liquefied silver dust, and then painted on this very expensive sort of work, but somebody thought it was worth it, and it's greatly detailed, a fantastic artwork, and a whole new modern motif of this monochromatic style. One from Gangwon Island, just off the coast of Seoul here, with 2 tigers and all kinds of nice motifs, a very friendly and royal sort of Sanshin. This from Jeju Island. This is one of the only ones in the nation that does not have a tiger. They always have a tiger. They always have the human figure, a pine tree, and a tiger are the 3 essential elements of a Sanshin icon. This one does not have a tiger, one of the only ones you'll find, because it's on Jeju Island, Halasan Mountain. You can see the crater lake, the Baekdokdam Lake of Hala behind this here. And Hala Island doesn't have tigers, never did have tigers. And so therefore this artist did not put a tiger in there, but put a white deer. This is the white deer pond, Baekdokdam behind it. Put a white deer barking instead of the tiger. This is unique, playful, but there are no rules that cannot be broken here in this. In Incheon City hardly has any mountains you want to talk about. The mountain here is only 200 meters high, but still we have the biggest Sanshin statue in the entire nation. And nobody knows about this. It's close to the international airport. Could be a nice little tourism touch, but even when I talk to Incheon City tourism officials, they don't even know this exists. And it's right there in their country. This is 4 meters high statue of the Sanshin, and in here a shrine with 77 bronze statues of the Sanshin, representing 77 holy mountains around the nation. Just a whole unique thing in itself, and Incheon City, who would think? Even Dangun, the original founding king of Korea, supposedly, mythical king, you hear beginning to be depicted in this way, and not just a heavenly spirit, but being shown in a Korean mountain context, like Sanshin, closely related with the Sanshin mountain spirit, and beginning to be blended. For more information, this is in the book, I believe, at the end of my paper, so you don't have to write it down, I think. But if you're interested in more about this, I have hundreds and hundreds of pages are up on the internet, on these sites that I've done about all these topics and places and these artworks. Okay? And we're trying to promote a new national slogan, I would like, the Baekdudaegan Sanwang Daeshin, which you could, this Chinese and ancient Hangul, a stamp I had made, and you could translate this as the kingly spirits of the Whitehead mainline mountains are great spirits, or alternatively, the Whitehead Great Ridge Mountain Kings are truly great spirits. Possible translations, that we can get this, or I'm trying to promote this to the Korean public, Baekdu Daegan Sanwang Daeshin, to have just some appreciation, some recognition, and perhaps eventually we can pressure the national government into recognizing these aspects of Korean culture, and yes, we're registering them with UNESCO as official parts, and I think this will really help Korea's tourism, its reputation, and just many, many aspects for the promotion and preservation of traditional cultural heritage here. That's it.